I think arguably, Simon, Nottingham Forest pulled off result of the weekend with that 1-0 away win at Stamford Bridge. They beat Chelsea by a single goal to nil. The captain and defender Joe Worrall played a huge part in that win, but it came at a time when Joe has been dealing with a personal family tragedy. In a chat with Joe earlier this morning, I spoke to him just before we came on air. He and I reflect on that subject briefly, but we began with Joe looking back on that quite amazing 3 points that they managed to get at Chelsea.
Fantastic result, something that we've been trying to rectify for quite a while, getting a win away from home. Our last one being our only win last season, Southampton on our travels. But to take, obviously, a Chelsea scalp, especially at their place as well, was very rewarding. And the way we did it as well, it wasn't just smash and grab. It was very much pretty even Steven in the first half. We've managed to score the goal early on in the second half. Langer pounced on a bit of a mistake from their midfield. And I thought we were good for the win. We defended as a team and it was jubilation at the final whistle.
Joe, what are we seeing then? Is this a different, braver approach by Nottingham Forest this season?
I think so. Last year, there weren't, bar a few of the players, there weren't many lads who actually had experienced the Premier League. The manager hadn't, I hadn't, Vice-Captain Yatesy hadn't. We had a few boys, Cheku Kiyate, hundreds of games in the Premier League, Serge, Willy Bolly, who have as well. But the majority of the squad was quite raw and fresh from the Championship and different leagues from around the world. So I think this year we're trying to focus on the mistakes we made last season and really trying to learn and use the experience and the ups and downs we did have from last season to benefit us this year. Again, we've signed a lot more players and there's new faces in the door, which we're very appreciative of, the owner and the staff behind the scenes bringing the new boys in. But we'll have to wait and see. We're only 4 games in. We've done really well. Good start, a lot better than we did last year. So it's looking positive.
You mentioned new faces coming through the door, Joe. Your owner, Mr. Evangelos Marinakis, talks about you becoming one of the unique forces in football. I mean, do you think at Forest you can achieve that whilst you're there?
Of course, definitely. I think you only have to look at what Brian Clough and Peter Taylor did all those years ago with a shoestring budget. Forgetting, obviously, we signed the first £1 million player in Trevor Francis. But now I think definitely this season and the way that the owner's so ambitious and speaks so highly of the manager and the football club, and he really understands the identity that the city has and the people connected with the club. Why not? The sky's the limit. He's had unbelievable success with Olympiacos over the seasons. He's been in charge there. And especially with Forest, so far, every single year that he's been in charge, there's been a steady graduation of improvement and of togetherness with the city. It's such a good time to be a Forest fan, and especially I'm very lucky to be a player.
Listen, to hit the heights, Joe, you're going to have to do that without Brennan Johnson. You're going to miss him.
Yeah, we'll miss him, definitely. Brennan's a lovely lad, really, really kind-hearted, hard-working individual, and he's a mate of mine. So it'll be sad to see. Oh, don't get me wrong, I'll see him again out and about. But in terms of on the football pitch, he offered so much for us. He was the quickest player in the league last season. The way he carried the ball and set up counter-attacks for us, and the years before that, getting us to the Premier League, he was a vital part of getting us there and keeping us up there. So, but at the same time, that's just life and that's football. You get a nice sum of money for a player like that, a homegrown player. Very hard to turn down, and especially for Brennan to go to Tottenham as well, massive football club with big aspirations. So I don't blame him, and I think he's done fantastically well to get where he is.
And I mentioned, Joe, you're Nottingham born and bred, but you've decided, no, this is where my future is. And you've signed a new long-term deal with the club, right?
Yeah, well, it's I don't think anything's been announced yet. We've not actually heard anything. Me and my family and my agents nothing's been posted or contacted from the club yet. So, but yeah, we're looking to extend with Forest. I think my future's at Forest, and I really want to cement my place in the team and to play at the highest level. I think Forest is definitely the best club for me to do that and achieve things I want to do in the Premier League.
You were magnificent at Chelsea, and the team was magnificent. But Joe, this match came at a time when you and your family have been dealing with the tragedy of you losing your uncle, who was a police sergeant, Graham Saville. Have you dwelt a lot on that, Joe? And have you managed to try and come to terms with being a top player and yet dealing with this raw emotion?
No, I think us as a family were very, very strong and together, and me as a football player, and that's all I am at the end of the day. You just got to crack on with it. What happened with the family for the last 10 days or so was horrible, and we've all stuck together. I'm very, very proud of my family and everybody sticking together the way we have. And just thinking about him and his life and whatever is something that we'll do behind closed doors and privately. But like I say, it's very strange how it's in the news and whatever because of him being a policeman and the circumstances. But no, very, very proud to be a Worrall and a Saville and a Henshaw and all of the different last names we have and we've shared as a group. So football really took back seat, and obviously coming out against Chelsea and playing the way we did and winning the football match just shows you that as a family and football club are doing things right.
Steve Cooper heaped huge praise on you, Joe, for opting to play. It was your decision, I take it, and tell me about that decision. It can't have been an easy one.
Well, it was his decision to pick me. It's like I say, it's football. If somebody dies in your family, Jim, then you go to work the next day, don't you? I think it's something that you just have to crack on with, whether you're a footballer or not. We're very lucky and privileged to be in the position we're in. Sometimes at our detriment as well, with stuff in our private lives, things getting leaked and all that stuff. But this isn't the case. It's just more, obviously, because of his occupation and the way that it happened. But no, Chelsea away was just such a fantastic day for the Forest family and for my family as well. Just seeing us get the 3 points, much needed away from home, and standing there at the end and seeing the fans, seeing my family and my girlfriend and all my mates stood there at Stamford Bridge, and yeah, it was special.
You guys at your level of football, Joe, are looked upon as role models, but I think as a society we need to remember that people like your late uncle are true heroes as well in our own society. I'm sure you'd agree with me.
Yeah, definitely, of course. There's a lot of good people out there, and especially people who in the police force, the ambulance service, the NHS, the doctors and nurses around the country. And these people need to be celebrated. I think it takes such tragic circumstances for people to be celebrated. And I just think that these people are the real heroes. And you speak about role models with footballers and Instagram influencers and TikTokers nowadays, and same with you guys at TalkSPORT. A lot of people listen to you and they'll take inspiration, and some people will think, what a load of rubbish. Some people will think, take what you say as gospel. So I just think you understand that when you're in a position like we are, and my Graham was, my uncle was, in the police force, then you are a role model, and you've got to act accordingly. And I'm very proud of the position I've got to, and the position my uncle did as well.
That was Nottingham Forest Joe Worrall, Simon, speaking to me just before we came on air. You know, Joe spoke like a very mature young man. He's only 26.
Indeed he did.
He spoke like a good, solid family man.
That's right.
And he spoke like a great club captain.
Well, that's right. In a world of perceived prima donnas, when you listen to young men that are like that, you understand why he's the captain of the club. When you listen to that particular conversation that you had with him, was very stoic, very balanced in his views. I think probably the football pitch, given the circumstances surrounding his family, is not a bad place for him, because it will give him a distraction from the undoubted grief that family will be experiencing. He's right in a lot of things he says about the nature of influence and the celebration of heroes, but the culture of heroes is probably misplaced at times, because people like his uncle and many other parts of society that do things that are in far more difficult roles than being a professional footballer aren't celebrated and cherished the way they perhaps should be.
Yeah.
But that's the world that we live in. And he makes good observations about the nature of the media and people listening to people of perceived influence. But that's probably the reasons why. What you heard there is the reasons why he's the captain of the club, because he speaks in such a fashion, an inclusive fashion, about the values that he holds, the value that the football club holds. I also liked because the football narrative will be from the sort of football mafia. How dare an owner suggest that the club's going to go bigger, better, and bolder?
Yes.
Yeah. His take on that is damn straight. Absolutely, that's what we're going to attempt to achieve. We've done it before in a previous incarnation. Now, obviously, replicating Brian Clough and Peter Taylor is something that I think is going to be very difficult to do because they were two of a kind.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that Nottingham Forest have got a history of being a club that's achieved remarkable things. They're now back in the Premier League. You know, sometimes in aiming for the star, if you aim for the stars, you take the moon on the way up. These are the things that you should achieve. But listen, that was a good interview and a very solid, decent young man.
Joe Worrall speaking to me earlier on this morning. Thanks for that, Joe.